Hey guys, welcome back to another episode here of House Divided. Today we're going to go through the previews and predictions of this weekend of college football. Very important weekend for a lot of teams. Have a lot of scary games here and there, and teams have to take care of business to make that push for the college football playoff, the conference championships, and maybe even the NFL playoffs starting to take a picture this weekend. So, first order of business. Can the Swamp help pull off another upset with Ole Miss coming into town?
Can and will are different questions in my opinion. Can, they absolutely can. Absolutely. DJ Lagway makes this team be able to compete with a lot of teams and win a lot of games like we saw. Maybe if Lagway stays in that game, they beat Georgia. I don't think they will, however. I think Ole Miss has found their momentum, and I know what they have at stake, and all they have to do is win, and they're in the playoff. So I think Jackson Dart, Walter Nolan, Trey Harris, they have what it takes to win that game.
Yeah, I agree as well. I think it is possible for Florida to win that game. But like you said, I think Ole Miss is rolling at the right time, end of the season, pushing towards the playoff. They have Trey Harris back, who missed that Georgia game, but they didn't really miss him. But I think it might be a close game, but I think Ole Miss and that offense is just too much for Florida in the end. And that Ole Miss D-line is going to get to DJ and kind of rough him up a bit, and that's going to be the difference in the game for me.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's what they did to Beck, and I mean, Beck's way more experienced than Lagway is. But I really like Lagway, but I still think Ole Miss takes it. I mean, to me, Ole Miss is a team that's 2 plays away from being undefeated right now. So I think they're a very good team, and they're catching momentum when they most need momentum. So I think they come out with the win this week.
Yeah, I agree. Next topic, we got our favorite team, besides obviously the teams we support, the Cinderella story, Indiana, finally getting a top 25 matchup. Will the Cinderella story prevail, or to be the juggernauts of Ohio State?
Yeah. As we all know, this is a big noon kickoff game, so that's unfortunate, but it's still what I'm going to wake up to, what I'm looking forward to first thing in the morning. I think I'm going to get it out the way. I think Ohio State wins this game. It's at the Shoe. They have the veteran playmakers. They have one of the most rounded rosters in the league, something I don't think Indiana has. I do think this game is closer. I find the opening line a little bit bigger than I would have liked it to be if Ohio State were to cover. I mean, I think the score might be around there. I think it'll be a little less, though. But overall, I like Ohio State to win this game, but would not be surprised with Indiana keeping it close.
I agree to disagree with you. I think Ohio State is going to win, but I think the only reason I would not bet the spread is because Indiana's head coach is known for covering spreads, but I think it's going to be.
I think they'll cover. I think it'll be right under the spread. I don't think, I'm saying, it's a little high in my opinion.
Yeah, I wouldn't bet it because of that reason, but if I'm looking at the teams, I think Ohio State will destroy Indiana. I think Indiana hasn't really been tested at all. Their best win's Michigan at home, and I saw the other day they've played 7 out of the 8 worst teams in the Big Ten, and this is their first real test. Though Ohio State has played Oregon, has had obviously some of the similar teams Indiana's faced, but they've also had some tests, especially with Oregon, and Ohio State players are more experienced in these type of games, like the Penn State game, the Oregon game, and I think they're just going to come in and show the mismatch in talent and experience and kind of blow the doors off Indiana.
Exactly. And I think Indiana might be able to keep it close early and at the start, similar to Penn State, and even Northwestern did a week ago against Ohio State. But like both of those games, I feel like Ohio State will come towards the end, and their veteranness, their conditioning, their discipline will show out there.
Yeah, I think the only way Curtis O'Rourke's going to have to take care of the ball, which he's done a great job of that so far this season. But if Indiana can force 2 turnovers, they'll be in that game. But if they can't, and Ohio State's forcing turnovers, it'll be game over.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. Even though from 11 to 2:30, I'm a Hoosier. I do think I do think the Buckeyes pull this one out.
Yeah, I agree.
So from one team that's looking to make an upset, let's look at another team that has been able to upset two teams in a row, actually, that were once considered Big 12 favorites. This team, this week, they're facing the team that is now probably the Big 12 favorite, at least according to both me and you. Can Kansas do it again this week?
Again, another fishy line with that 2.5.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't expect it against BYU. Didn't expect it against Iowa State. Obviously, I fell for that trap taking Iowa State. But I think Colorado is just rolling right now, and I think obviously Kansas is rolling in their own way too. But I think Colorado has a lot to play for. Obviously, they went out and they're in the playoffs, so I think they'll take care of business in a tough road game. Very not the craziest home environment for Kansas, but they've had some show out here, maybe for Colorado, because a lot of people, obviously Colorado is a big brand now, and Deion Sanders and stuff. A lot of people show up for that game, but I think Colorado and Shedeur and Travis Hunter get it done in Kansas.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I saw the video of what's his name, Travis Hunter's recovery routine. It looks insane, just like the way he plays is insane. With Shedeur's momentum, he's keeping it going. Travis is still the Heisman favorite according to Vegas right now, and he's going to get that going. So I think while Kansas has a lot of momentum, I think so does Colorado, and I think they come out with the win.
Yeah. Speaking of, Colorado has kind of become America's team since Deion's gone there. But speaking of the real American team, Army, they face the Irish. Can America's team defeat the Irish this weekend?
Yes, actually. If I have, I'm gonna look at it this way. If I have to pick a winner, I'm going Notre Dame, but would not be surprised at all whatsoever with an Army win. We've seen Notre Dame struggle, not as much recently. They've actually taken care of business well recently, but I mean, all it takes is if Army can control the game with their tough run game, which is something Notre Dame has actually kind of liked to do this year, and play good defense and shut down that Notre Dame rushing game, which Riley Leonard has been able to do very well this year, and those backs as well. It will be very interesting to see. I think Army winning would be awesome. I think America would rejoice if we could get Army. Hopefully, vaulting them into the playoff would be the greatest Cinderella story ever. Even greater than Cinderella herself. Even greater than if Indiana beats Ohio State. If we can get Army in the playoff.
Yeah, I hope Army wins. To be honest, I don't like Notre Dame, not because of the beat us. I just never like them. It's an ugly team to me, but I think it's going to be an ugly game. Very low scoring, a lot of running. A team's going to hold the ball for like 6 minutes each if they keep getting first downs. And I think the difference is who can stop the run game better. Honestly, I have not seen a lot of Army games, so I don't know how their defense is looking. I just know they can run the ball, and they're throwing it a little bit better. But I think Army has a chance. They have a chance. This is obviously the best chance they've had in a while against Notre Dame, and I hope they can pull it off, man, because that would also open up a lot of spots for people for the playoffs for Notre Dame spot.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be wild, crazy. And then, but here's the interesting thing part. If Army wins, would they jump, say, the Big 12 teams that are currently last and become the 5th conference champion instead of over them? I mean, we could get utter chaos if that happens.
Yeah, it would. I think the argument would be between Boise State, Army, and the Big 12 champ.
Yeah, those 4th and 5th conference championship spots would be really interesting with the win here, because I think Boise State wins out, and then we just have to see. So they shouldn't fall behind either of them, but then you're really talking about how close, say, Colorado and Army are, and then Army plays the big game against Notre Dame, which is something Colorado doesn't get to do.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. The whole 12-team playoff will be interesting.
Yeah. Very. it'll be a special experience that there hasn't been much to do. But so far, we've been talking about upsets. We've been talking about can Indiana upset? Can Kansas upset? Can Army upset? Now let's talk about, can we make you upset? Can Auburn upset the Aggies this weekend as a trap game when they play, if they're preparing too much for the Longhorns?
Yeah, I mean, I saw that interview with Mike
Yeah.
Elko accidentally
That's
saying
why we brought it up. That's why we brought it up. We saw what Mike Elko was saying, so we had to bring it up.
Yeah, saw he got a little slip up on his words. Maybe Texas is all on his mind, but I think this is in the past. This is a game we have lost. Looking ahead to a big game, have a lot to play for. Still, obviously, a conference championship spot, even the playoff spot. And in the past, we have lost this type of game. But I think the difference is we don't have Jimbo Fisher anymore. We have obviously Jimbo Fisher won a national title with Florida State, but I mean he had Jameis Winston. I think I could have been drawn a place for Jameis back in college, and we could have made a run. But anyway, I think this is the
Got
type
that
of
30-30 vision with him.
Yeah, I think obviously I'm a little scared. Night game in Auburn. It's gonna be hostile crowd, even though they're not that good this year. We've seen a couple of teams go in there and struggle and barely squeak out a win. Obviously, the 2.5 point line scares me a little bit. I think it would be a little bit higher even at Auburn, considering the difference in our teams. But I think it'll be a close game. I'm not going to say we're going to come in there and blow the doors off. I think it's going to be like a 7-13 type point game. And I think we're not looking ahead to Texas. We're taking care of business this week, and then all next week, get ready for probably the biggest game in Kyle Field and honestly maybe ever.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to agree with you. I think Elko's a good coach. I think this A&M team will be well prepared this week and next week, but specifically to the topic we're talking about now, I think they'll be both ready this week. Because, I mean, also, if you want to talk about it, I mean, Auburn isn't exactly a great team this year, but they also have their biggest game of the year next week as well that they're looking ahead to in the Iron Bowl. So I think you can put both teams, obviously, in similar situations. I think A&M takes care of business this week.
Yeah, hopefully, because that would just kill all the momentum and hype for that Texas game for a bit. Obviously, once the game's closer, the hype will
get good thing then. Ticket prices go down.
Yeah, but I already have a ticket, so I don't care about that.
Some of us have not been as fortunate.
Yeah. Well, that concludes our segment for college football. Let's look into the NFL Sunday this week. Can the 49ers turn around a so far disappointing season? Obviously, they've been riddled with a lot of injuries, but still disappointing to their standards against the Packers.
Can they, like I said with Ole Miss, can they? Of course they can. They're a great team. They're getting healthier. They got McCaffrey back a couple of weeks ago. Jawan Jennings is playing fantastic football. He's looking like the best receiver on the team right now. Ricky Pearsall got back. He played great. He had that big touchdown. I like the team. But again, I'm looking at how both teams are playing. And I know Jordan Love hasn't played at the cleanest football, but neither has Brock Purdy. Overall, I think I like the football and momentum Green Bay's going with right now. And when it comes to picking a winner for that game, I'd go with Green Bay.
This is a little toss-up for me. I think the difference will be which quarterback can take care of the ball. They both have great running games. They both have great defenses that create a lot of turnovers. I think obviously Jordan Love has been struggling with his turnover issues here and there. Not even having a lot of turnovers, just silly ones, like trying to do too much when the play's basically over. And I think at the end of the day, the 49ers can force more mistakes out of Jordan Love than I think the Packers can out of Brock Purdy. So I am going to pick the Niners to kind of right the ship a little bit. I just think that they're more experienced. They obviously have Super Bowl expectations, and I think this is the start of their turnaround. I still think they can sneak into the playoffs. And, yeah, I think recent years also the 49ers have owned the Packers. Even though last year in the playoffs, the Packers almost went in there and pulled up an upset after beating us, the Cowboys. But I do think the Niners take care of business, and I think McCaffrey has that big game since he's been back.
I mean, I can see a world, obviously, when the Niners win. It's a very, like you said, it's a toss-up. You said it comes down to who turns the ball over less. Obviously, I do think that if turnovers were to happen, the offense of the Niners is stagnated a little, and I think the Green Bay might be more capable of overcoming those said turnovers when they do happen. So that's why I like Love. Like I said earlier this week, he plays a bit like Favre in the fact that he has some crazy turnovers, but that also means he has some crazy one-of-a-kind throws that make him really special. And
but I think he's going to have a few of those, but he's going to have some questionable ones, right to Fred Warner or to one of the boys. And I think Brock's going to take care of the ball, and I think the 49ers were going to pull this one out. But I could also see what you said, like the Packers winning. It's a really close game, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of the closest games this week. I mean, that's the NFL for you. Every game will be close, or not every game, but when two elite teams come, it's a lot harder to pick who, and it comes a lot more. It comes one every week. So, but this week there's a couple, and I do think it will be the Packers winning, just because I like LaFleur, what he's done this year, and Love has gotten going recently again this last week. So
that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of another close game, there's a 1-point spread in Seattle with the Cardinals being favored by 1. Will the Cardinals continue to roll against Seattle in Seattle?
Yes, they will. As of right now, I'm going to go ahead and say that the NFC West might be the most interesting division in football, because I could see a world where the Rams, with this new momentum with Stafford, now that Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp are back, they could come and win the division. Seattle, after that big win against San Francisco, you can't count them out. Even though, in my opinion, they would probably be last in come the end of the year. And San Francisco, all the players we just talked about, and the McCaffrey's back, and you can never count them out. But right now, it's Arizona who's in the lead, and it's Arizona who's beat great teams. They beat the Chargers handedly, and you guys know how I feel about the Chargers, and we'll be talking more about the Chargers later and how great I think the Chargers are right now. So, yes, Marvin Harrison, I hope to see a big game from him, but if he doesn't, James Conner, what's his name? McBride is doing great. Even the secondary receiving options are doing really well. And Kyler's really matured this year, and he's playing really well. So I do think Arizona comes out with the win.
I agree. I think, obviously, Seattle has those games where they look like one of the best teams in the league, and then has those games where they look like one of the worst. But I think Arizona is very good this year. They're obviously rolling. Obviously, they just had a bye week, so it could either slow down their momentum, but I think they're just fixing up some things and coming back right where they left off and going into Seattle and kind of taking a further lead in the division.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Arizona extends their lead this week. So that'll be good for Arizona, especially with all the doubts they had coming into the year. It's great to see Murray mature into what he's been this year, and I think that definitely propels them to a win this week.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. Like, Kyler Murray has been using his legs a lot more this season. I think that would be the key to the game. I think him using his legs against that Seattle defense will be difference. Have them on their toes a little bit to see, like, is he going to hand off to James Conner, or is he keeping it? Like, I think that'll be really the difference in the game if Kyler can really get out there on the run.
Yeah, I think that's also another thing about why Kyler's doing so well this year. People forget that last year he was coming off of an ACL injury, which is why he was so hampered back. I mean, you don't recover from something like that, and you're instantly at 100% the day you come back. So obviously he came back for a couple of games, got warm again, so that he wouldn't miss 2 full years. But you give him an offseason to get ready, and now that shows you how mobile again he is. And like as you said, it'll probably be the difference again this week. So awkward silence there, but we're going to move on to another close game about the team I said that I like so much. Will the Ravens bounce back against another AFC contender in the LA Chargers this week?
This is another toss-up, man.
That's been the theme of the NFL this week.
Yeah, on paper, I would say the Ravens are the better team, but what the Chargers have been doing has been impressive. That defense has been a top 3, maybe even top 1 defense in the league, maybe them and the Steelers up there. But I think the Ravens have to bounce back. We saw them like at the beginning of the season, people were counting them out 0-2, and then they went on that run. I think this is the first game they bounce back and they get it done in a close game against the Chargers. I think Justin Herbert's going to have another big game because, like we've said multiple times in this podcast, that Ravens pass defense is not good at all. Mm-hmm. But I think they get enough stops to give the ball to Lamar and have him do a little bit more than he did against Pittsburgh. And they'll turn the ball over way less than they did against Pittsburgh. I feel like there were some silly fumbles from Derrick Henry, who rarely fumbles. There was a crazy interception where it got ripped from the guy. I think those turnovers will be minimized, and I think the Ravens take care of business against the Chargers.
I'm going to have to disagree with you there. I think Jim Harbaugh gets revenge in this hardball. I don't remember if they played after that Super Bowl in which they played each other when he was still in San Francisco. But if it hasn't been played again, I think Jim finally gets revenge on his brother. I think Justin Herbert's playing incredible football right now. I think that offense is playing incredible football right now. I think Lambeau Ladd is on his way establishing himself into the wide receiver 1 of the Chargers and a wide receiver 1 in this league. And we'll be talking about him for years to come. And I also do think that defense is playing even better. Just what Jesse Minter has done for that defense is some of the most incredible things I've ever seen. How fast he's turned it around. I mean, this is a similar defense to the defense that won the national championship, except better and more advanced. And I do think this defense is fully capable of shutting down the Ravens offense. Not as much as Pittsburgh did, because I just think Pittsburgh has Lamar's number and John Harbaugh's number, and Mike Tomlin has been doing great with that. But I do think they'll be able to stop Lamar from scoring 42 points, 35 points, or heck, even 28 points or something around there. So I have the Chargers because I just really like their offense and their defense, and that's not something I can say about Baltimore, where I only like their offense.
I like Baltimore's rush defense. They had a little struggle in the second half against Pittsburgh, but besides that, throughout the season, they've been pretty solid. And I think, obviously, we saw Herbert finally air it out a lot more last game against the Bengals. But I think,
how incredible did it look?
That's what he's going to have to do against the Ravens to come out with a win. But I just think Lamar is going to have a MVP type game and really get the Ravens back on track to what we were thinking after they won those 6 games in a row.
Yeah, I mean, then again, you think about it, since then, he had the 2 big divisional games, fell short in both. Now he's facing another big game, trying to not fall to 3 games behind in the division. So we'll see. They have a lot to stand up for, but so do the Chargers. A gap just opened up. Maybe they're looking to win their own division, too. Only 2 games behind Kansas now, and they still have to play Kansas again. So I think this is a game neither team can afford to lose in their division race. So I think both of them come out angry and try to find some momentum. But I do think that the Chargers are coming in with momentum. So that's why I think they come out with the win.
That's fair. From Monday night to Sunday night, Eagles versus Rams. What are your thoughts on the game?
Eagles, like we talked about on Tuesday, they're the second best team in the NFC. They have we love momentum on this show, and I think the Eagles have some of the most momentum in the NFL, and as well as the Rams have a lot of momentum recently since the return of Puka and Cooper Cup. I think this will be a close game again because I really like McVay. I really like Stafford, and I really like those receivers. Shout out to Jared Verse, who's had an incredible rookie season. But I do think the Eagles come out with the win, even in a tough road game. Would not be surprised with the Rams win at all. I think it's going to be a close game, but I am going to have to take Philly in this one.
I think it's, like you said, it's going to be a close game. I think both teams are going to air it out a lot with those receivers and those quarterbacks, and really just a high passing game total from both teams. But yeah, I agree. I think the Eagles are going to pull this one out in a close manner. They have the momentum. They've been leaning on Saquon Barkley a lot more in the second half, and I think the Eagles' ability to really run the ball. Obviously, the Rams have Kyren Williams, but they're more of a passing team. They just give it to him in the red zone more and here and there. But I think the Eagles in the second half with feeding Saquon are going to pull it out.
Yeah, plus the Eagles are coming off of 10 days in rest, not 7. So that's obviously a ton of help too.
Yeah. All right. Let's go into our best bets, headlines, and fantasy explosion players. What are your headlines for this week?
I'm going to start us off. My first headline is the Texas schools survived the traps right before their big showdown. I think Texas A&M and the UT Longhorns both face trap games against Auburn and Kentucky, 2 games that could be close but shouldn't be. And I think both teams managed to stick out with the win.
You're favored by 21 points.
I know. But it's a trap game. Kentucky did it to Georgia, but they lost eventually. And they did it to Ole Miss. It's a trap game. We've shown recently that we haven't been the best team in the world, that we're that we're supposed to be. So I think we survived the traps. Both teams survived the traps. And we go into a showdown with the 2 only one-loss SEC teams that are looking to cement their SEC championship spot. I think they survived. That's my headline. My NFL headline, it's going to be a little repeat of last week. Instead of charging past the Bengals, I think we're charging past the Ravens. I talked about it 2 seconds ago. I'm a huge fan of Justin Herbert and that offense. I'm a huge fan of Jesse Minter and that defense. Joey Bosa. I don't know if Khalil Mack will be back, but if he does, huge impact there. Maybe they can do that pass rush, all that pressure that Pittsburgh was able to get to have Lamar be so inaccurate during the game. We'll see. I'm going with charge past the Ravens. I'm showing the Chargers a lot of faith here again today, and it's not little hint, spoiler. This is not the last I'm talking about the Chargers and my picks for them today.
Yeah. For my headlines, I have the Buffs survive Jayhawk scare. Like we talked about earlier, I think they don't lose their conference championship hopes or playoff hopes in Kansas. I do think another team in that conference is on a little upset alert at Arizona State, because Arizona State has been rolling as well. Mm-hmm. But I won't talk about that now. And then my NFL headline is the Vikes poke the bear. I just think the Bears have a lot of changes. Obviously, they looked a little bit better last week, but I think Minnesota, Justin Jefferson, Sam Darnold, finally, he had a bounce-back game from that awful game against Jacksonville. And I think they take care of business in Chicago. Now, for my fantasy explosion players, I got Tyreek Hill. He's projected 14.5 points. Obviously, been a down year for Tyreek owners. I am one myself. Drafted him number 2, expecting big things. Obviously, performed like a 5th-round receiver, if even. But I think he finally has his big explosion game against the Patriots, who allows 6th most fantasy points for receivers, about 35 points per game. And without Tua, I think it was Skylar Thompson playing that game. He got 13 points when they played earlier in the year. So I just think Tyreek Hill finally has that 36-point game. Maybe I'm not projecting that, but I just think he's going to go higher than 19, which is his 5+ of his projection. And then my second player I got is Brian Robinson Jr., playing against my own team, the Dallas Cowboys. Awful against running backs, 29th. I thought they would be last. Surprised they're only 29th, but I guess that's good on us. You saw what Joe Mixon did last week. He killed my hopes in 2 leagues of winning that week. He dropped 35 points, 3 touchdowns. And you saw what Kamara did, also killed me that week, 50 points that week 2. And then the Detroit running backs, they both went off against the Cowboys. So I think Brian Robinson is going to get at least 2 touchdowns, and that would get him to 12 points. And obviously he's going to have yards, so I think he's going to have a big game. My third player is Lambeau Ladd, one of my favorite players in the league. He's playing against the Ravens' pass defense that we talked about is atrocious, and we saw him and Herbert connect a lot last week in big moments, but also early in the game. And I think Herbert's going to find Lambeau Ladd wide open a lot of times against the Ravens defense, and his projection is 12.3 points.
All right, now for me, you just mentioned him, Justin Herbert. He's projected 19. I said earlier that I loved the Chargers this year and this week, and that I would be talking about them again. And here I am making another prediction with Justin Herbert. I'm going to run it back with him, as I've done. He proved me right last time. Baltimore is 30th against QBs in fantasy, and the Ravens defense has allowed the most passing yards and touchdowns to just in general this year. And I think this again will be a close game, and we're going to be throwing again in the end of the game. So I do think the Chargers come with a big game, and Justin Herbert comes in and definitely gets that 5+ again. Next, I got Bucky Irving, 10 points less than Herbert, only at 9. That is something he's hit the 5+ over that. Well over that in 3 of his last 4 games. The only one he didn't do that on was against Kansas City, which is expected that game. It was a tough loss, and you were not expecting to run the ball much that game. So, yeah, but this is a game against a team that's not the best rushing defense. They're not bad, but they're not the best. They're middle of the pack. So I do think Bucky Irving can go off. And then my last player is Josh Downs. I think Indianapolis is going to be playing from down the whole game, and they're going to be throwing the ball. AR gave him a good game last week, and he's going to be chucking it. And I think Josh Downs might be that guy. And Detroit is 29th against the wide receiver. So there are a lot of opportunities for points there.
Very good. Let's go straight into our best bets. I need to make up some here if I want to come back from that big hole I'm in. Mm-hmm. The first one I like is the Kansas and Colorado over 59.5 points. The total has gone over in 5 out of the last 7 Colorado games and 6 out of the last 7 Kansas games. And then in this matchup in the past, it's gone over in 7 out of the last 10. And I just think they both have high-powered offenses, not the best defenses. And I think it'll be a shootout that Colorado wins in. The second one I got is A&M -2.5. Just I put bias. I mean, I think we are going to win. And obviously my bias believes that we're going to win. But I don't mind laying a field goal if I think we're going to win, especially against an Auburn team that hasn't been the best this season. And then my last college bet I got is Bama -13.5 against the Sooners. The Sooners have been listed as home dogs 3 times, 2 of them which have come this season, and they're 0-3 against the spread in those games. Bama in their last 20 games are 13-7 against the spread, and OU as an underdog in their last 6 games are 2-4 against the spread. And then for my NFL bets, I got the Texans first half spread, a little fancy here, -4.5. The Texans are 10-1 against the first half spread this season, which is impressive. Will Levis is 0-5 against the spread in divisional games, and I just think the Texans start off hot and really hand it to Tennessee early. And then I wouldn't mind the -8 in the whole game, but I trust them to cover the first half more because Tennessee could backdoor cover. Like they're always a fourth quarter team that puts up some points here and there. And then my last bet is Colts +7.5 against the Lions. You know how much I love the Lions. But I do think the Lions win this game, but I just think the Colts at home keep it somewhat interesting. Anthony Richardson has made 11 starts, and he's 8-3 against the spread in those starts. And as an underdog, he's 6-2 against the spread. Teams who are road favorites in a game after being double-digit favorites in the game prior, which the Lions were, and obviously they covered against the Jaguars. That's the only bet that I made that hit, are 40, 51, and 1 against the spread. And then historically, the Colts, when they're home dogs of 6 plus more points, they're 13-2 against the spread. So I just love this cover spot, not a maybe win spot, just a cover spot for the Colts here.
My first bet is the Illinois one. Illinois -1. They're undefeated against the spreads as favorite as long as the spread is under 20 points. Actually, I think it's 22 points. But it's only one. They've won every close favorite, anything under a touchdown as favorites. They've covered the spread. And their only loss against the spread was on the road this season against Oregon. So their only road loss against the spread was against Oregon, which is the number 1 team in the nation. So we can forgive that. And then my NFL bet is the Chargers +2.5. As I've said multiple times, I think they're going to win this game. But some stats, they only have 1 against the spread loss at home. And they're 7-3 in general against the spread compared to Baltimore, who is a lot worse. They're 5-4-1, if I believe. And they're 1-3 against the spread in their last 4, including one where they were 3-point favorites last week, similar to they are this week against another top AFC team. So I do see another against the spread loss coming from Baltimore this week, and obviously Chargers covering that 2.5.
Yep. All right. Good bets. Hopefully I can catch up this week, not dig a deeper hole like I did last week, but it'll be interesting to see. I do believe I'm going to cut the lead, but we'll see. Anyway, thanks y'all for watching, and see y'all Tuesday with our reactions from our predictions and all the big games that occurred.